Alrighty, that's enough waiting. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Make Money with Mace bracket live stream. Going to be streaming a bit more regularly, I think, going forward. And not really a better time than now, right, to start. So, going to be making my picks for March Madness, all 63. Going to go through it. I'll post my blogs as well for each day, what the lines are going to be. But right now, it's just a bracket stream. So, going to start off with the first game that's right up top. Duke versus Siena. Picking Duke. So the next game, Ohio State versus TCU. I'm going to pull up a tool I love called KenPom.com, and it shows the ranked teams, right, where you have Duke, Arizona, Michigan. Like basically, whoever you think is good by KenPom, typically. And then you can see who made the tournament, right? Where like NC State got knocked out yesterday. They ranked 34th in KenPom, but they did not make the tournament. They're not highlighted in red. And so when you have teams that are pretty close, it's a really useful tool, like TCU and Ohio State, right? I think Ohio State's ranked kind of highly, but they really didn't step up very well against the class of the Big Ten, right? They didn't really pull off huge wins against like Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois, Michigan State, even like they struggled with Iowa and teams like that. Whereas TCU, playing in the Big 12, I think the Big 12 is a better conference of the Big 10 on the whole. And their strength of schedule, right? Their strength of schedule net rating is really high. Ohio State's is high as well, but I think that's carried by having to play Michigan twice and Illinois twice and things like that. And TCU does have a win over Florida, and I like Jamie Dixon as a coach. So on the whole, I'm going to go with TCU over Ohio State. St. John's, Northern Iowa, Red Storm all the way. Kansas against Cal Baptist. I mean, I'm not going to be the one to pick against Kansas this early. Louisville versus South Florida is an interesting one, right? Where South Florida's coach is good. Louisville sort of limped down the stretch. The ACC wasn't too great, and they kept getting pieced up in the ACC. I think USF is pretty good. I mean, they should be ranked pretty highly. South Florida, scrolling through. And this is like NBA net rating for those familiar, where all of these pluses are to the average, right? Where like if everything's perfectly average, Wisconsin's 23 points better than the average, sort of thing. Yeah, Louisville's ranked pretty highly. I just don't love them. They don't inspire much confidence. And USF as their coach, his name is escaping me, but he's an Alabama disciple, Nate Oates disciple, so they love to run and get up and down the floor. 25-8 is pretty impressive, and it's not like they played nobodies, right? Their out-of-conference scheduling was tough. So I think that they really are going to probably be the 11 over the 6. That's the most common upset you see, and I think South Florida, being the class of the American Athletic Conference, is going to sort of take down a mediocre Louisville team. Not sort of, I think they will. Michigan State against North Dakota State, easy. UCLA against UCF. This one's pretty interesting because UCLA, when they weren't traveling on the road, were pretty phenomenal against, like, when they were at home, they're 17-1 at home. And they're pretty bad on the road in the Big Ten, but they're also doing bizarre swings where they're playing, like, Rutgers, Ohio State, Iowa, all back-to-back-to-back on the road. I just don't think that's very conducive to good hoop, for lack of a better word. So I think UCLA being able to stay in one place on the road is different, and I think that with Tillabo and Devin Dent coming back, I think they'll be good to go. I think UCLA beats UCF. UConn against Furman, easy. Moving on to the Southern region, Florida against the winner of tonight's game between Prairie View and Lehigh. Picking Florida, keeping it easy. I really like Iowa over Clemson. Clemson's another one of these mediocre ACC teams, and Iowa has Drake's coach from a couple of years ago where they almost upset Miami. Oh, what's his name? His name's escaping me. but he's a good coach. Oh my goodness. Because Drake was good. Yeah. Ben McCollum. Yeah, he's a good coach. They play at a snail's pace, though, which I know some people don't like. But because they do play at a snail's pace and they play their game, I think that Iowa's just going to sort of dominate in terms of stylistically the game. So I think Iowa takes it in that 8-9. Vanderbilt against McNeese. Vanderbilt with Darius Miles is a different team, and I don't think McNeese is all too good. Nebraska gets their first tourney win against Troy, first tourney win ever, so I think that'll be good for Fred Hoiberg. This is probably the most common upset pick, but North Carolina without Caleb Wilson has just not been the same team. And I think VCU is super solid, so I'm going to go with the Rams there. Illinois against Penn. Illinois is going to throttle them. Their offense is ridiculously good. St. Mary's against Texas A&M. Texas A&M loves to chuck threes and run up and down the floor, and St. Mary's likes to play a plodding pace. So I think that with St. Mary's in general, I think that St. Mary's is probably going to. They're a good team, but I think Texas A&M is just a really bad matchup for them. I don't know how they're going to keep up, and it's just going to be hard to keep the pace down against Texas A&M. So I'm going to go with the Aggies. Houston's awesome. They're going to beat up Idaho. Go to the West, Arizona. I'm not even thinking about it. I think Utah State's better than Villanova. Villanova's sort of like a nothing team. Don't really know how else to describe them. They just kind of exist. They won a bunch of games in a pretty bad Big East this year. Utah State's the class of the Mountain West, and they're ranked pretty highly. Yeah, they're ranked higher than them in KenPom. 28-6 in the Mountain West. Mountain West isn't exactly a bad conference. You've got like San Diego State's historically pretty good out of there. So I think that Utah State is probably going to win pretty handily against Villanova. So I'm going to take another 9 in the 8-9. Wisconsin's really good. Their guards are really good. Nick Boyd's very good. They're going to handle High Point. Then you got Cal against Hawaii. So Hawaii does this weird thing where they don't play any help defense, and I can't think of many worse players to face than Darius Acuff when you don't play help defense. So Razorbacks over the Warriors there. Brigham Young against Texas. AJ DeMonts is the best player on the floor, and I think he's been so good. He's just been ridiculously good. The 40-point games, the 40-minute games, the triple-doubles, all of that. I think when he gets to finally not play in the Big 12, which has some of the best teams in the country across the board, and he's acquitted himself incredibly well against those excellent teams. I think BYU is going to beat up Texas pretty badly, even without Richie Saunders. Richie Saunders is an awesome, awesome basketball player. Don't get it twisted. I don't think BYU is going to be making too much noise, but AJ DeBonts is by far and away the best player in the tournament. Gonzaga against Kennesaw State, going with the Zags. Miami against Mizzou. This is a weird one where you have, saying mediocre ACC versus like mediocre SEC, right? Mizzou has not really impressed me at all this year. They just sort of, again, were one of these teams in the big conferences that stumbled their way to 20 wins. I think that it's sort of inflated 20 wins. I think Miami is actually kind of a decent team, right? Where I don't think KenPom loves them too much. Yeah, they went 25-8. Didn't have a great non-conference because it was tough to schedule anybody. But again, they went 25-8, finished third in the ACC regular season. I think that is acquitting themselves fairly well, right? They beat up North Carolina. Like, I don't know. I think that Miami's probably better than Mizzou. Picking Purdue, not thinking too hard. Picking Michigan, not thinking too hard. Georgia, I know, put up 120 points in a game this year, but I just don't trust them. I don't trust the mediocre SEC teams. I trust like Arkansas and Florida and Tennessee because their coaches are good. They have good players, all that stuff. I think St. Louis is really good, and I think they're probably going to beat Georgia. Then I've liked the 9 so far. Texas Tech without JT Toppin is not helpless. They've got a bunch of dudes. Christian Anderson's awesome. They're going to take care of Akron. Alabama's going to beat up Hofstra even without Aiden Holloway. Tennessee's going to kill whoever that comes out there, right? They are very much better than SMU or Miami of Ohio. And Virginia's really good too. Uh, they're really good, but I have my issues with them, which we will get to once we get to the round of 32. Kentucky and Santa Clara. I think Kentucky, Otega Oweh by himself probably wins this game for the Wildcats, so I'm going to go with them. Santa Clara's had a great season for sure, though. Then we go Iowa State. Round of 32. So, I'm going to just take a sip here. Sorry for people who don't like ASMR drinking, whatever. So we have Duke and TCU. I like Jamie Dixon a lot. Duke is just too good. Duke is not going to get knocked out until the Sweet 16. St. John's versus Kansas depends on what Darren Peterson gives them. And Fiore, his last name's escaping me. But Kansas has some good players, like Trey White's good. Fiore Adunga, he's the Congolese player who did not start playing basketball until pretty late in his high school age. He's been a really complete player, but he's their only real front court presence against uh, Ejiofor and Bryce Perkins. Bryce Perkins or Bryce Hopkins? I always want to say Bryce Perkins because Bryce Perkins, I want to say, was a baseball player. No, Bryce Perkins. This is tangent. Bryce Perkins played quarterback. He plays for Winnipeg. He was a quarterback at UVA recently, and he was on the Rams for a hot second in 2020. So that's where that name's coming from. Bryce Hopkins is who I'm thinking of, the basketball player for St. John's, who's very good. And then Ejiofor, his name's escaping me. Zuby Ejiofor. Their front court's awesome, and Dylan Darling's had a really solid season as well. So I think with their front court being as good as it is, Kansas will have their hands full, and I don't think Darren Peterson's been consistent enough. I know he's played a lot more minutes recently, but it's almost hurt the team because he's been a ball stopper. It's been a weird year for Kansas, and I think St. John's has coalesced at the right time where they really, when you're a good team, you're supposed to run roughshod through your conference, and that's exactly what St. John's did. After January 3rd, they only dropped one conference game at UConn, so they had a really good run there. We get to South Florida against Michigan State. I think Michigan State is too much inside for South Florida. Jackson Kohler and Cole McCarr are very good, and Jeremy Fears is really good too. They're a really complete, good team for March. Lots of experience, lots of high-end talent, all that. Got UCLA and UConn. As much as I was lauding UCLA being able to stay in one spot for a while, I think UConn is just too good. Brandon Mullins is really good. Silas Ball is really good. I think that's just kind of too much for a good but not great UCLA team. Florida against Iowa. Florida's making it there. Again, Vanderbilt with Darius Miles is good, and Nebraska sort of sputtered down the stretch. Gonna go with Vanderbilt. Illinois' offense is too good for VCU, and Houston is going to beat up Texas A&M. We get to Arizona versus Utah State. Arizona's been so good, ridiculously good all year long. Wisconsin against Arkansas. This is a tough one because as good as like Nick Boyd is, as good as Darius Acuff is, what am I going to look at in terms of who I'm picking, what drives my pick in this sort of tough matchup between two really good teams. And I think that Arkansas, I know Wisconsin scored 90 points in the game and all that. I think that Arkansas just has a better overall team. I think Darius Acuff is the best player on the floor. I think that Trayvon Brazil's inside presence is really strong. I think that their general athleticism is going to be a lot, and they can play multiple ways where they can play a slow down game. They can play up tempo. They are not beholden to exactly one style of play. And I think that Cal really trusts his guys too. Cal's not really an in-game adjustment guy, but I think that overall he's one of the best coaches in this tournament. So, going to be going with him for that. And here's an upset pick: BYU over Gonzaga. I think BYU is going to beat Gonzaga because I don't see Gonzaga. They're not one of their. It's not one of their great teams. They've had great teams in the past. This is not one of them. I think AJ DeBonta is too much. Again, not having to play against Houston and Iowa State and Kansas and Texas Tech and Arizona and all these amazing teams in the Big 12. And all of a sudden, you're not facing that same caliber of defense, that same caliber of team, incredibly high caliber teams that are familiar with what you do. Now you get to face a bunch of teams that have no idea what you're actually capable of because, as much film study as they do, a player like Debonsa is pretty unstoppable. Even his bad games are like 27 points lately. So BYU, I think, beats Gonzaga upset in the round of 32. Then we get to Miami versus Purdue. Purdue's really good, especially against teams like Miami. I think they're going to take care of business. Michigan will take care of St. Louis. Texas Tech is going to beat up Alabama because, again, they might not have JT Toppin, but they're still a very, very good team. Alabama all of a sudden missing a starter and then having to face a team like Texas Tech in round two, I think is very bad for them. Again, like they're really good. Alabama, not like they have been in past years, but I think Texas Tech on the whole gets the win here. Tennessee against Virginia. I like Tennessee. I like Jacoby Gillespie. I know their free throws aren't great in general, but I think that Rick Barnes is a good coach. I think Tennessee has experienced guys, and I think that they sort of underperformed the SEC and in general their KenPom rating, right? This is where KenPom is useful. Tennessee ranks 16th, Virginia ranks 13th, and Tennessee, as much as I was saying the SEC was kind of mediocre this year, I think that Tennessee, the SEC was still better than the ACC this year, and Virginia has weird losses, right? Where they lost to North Carolina at home, right after North Carolina had just lost 2 games out west. They were 7.5 point favorites. It was like, okay, like the Tar Heels are kind of fake. Uh, Virginia has been awesome. They're going to really prove it. It's a step up in class. Like you're facing a top tier talent like Caleb Wilson, and they got smoked. They got absolutely smoked. And I think that's the sort of loss that sticks with me, where you're supposed to make this leap up. You're supposed to do something pretty great, and you just completely falter. So I think that against a team like Tennessee, which again is a really good team, they underperformed, they lost some tight games. I think that the Vols end up beating Virginia and making another Sweet 16. Iowa State's been awesome all year. Milan Manlovovich has been unreal. He's an absolute flamethrower. Kentucky's had a pretty down year. They were supposed to be really good. They weren't. They were sort of okay. Tough time stepping up in class in the SEC, which was not great considering the SEC was not this powerhouse conference as it has been in years past. Big 12's been outstanding. Iowa State's been in some real battles, and it's only going to get easier in the tournament until they get to the Sweet 16. This is where I'm going to go a bit less chalky. Say it outright. Uh, Duke's really beat up. Caleb Foster is out for the whole tournament in all likelihood. Patrick Gamba is hurt and he's supposed to play in the tournament. I don't know how healthy he'll actually be. And without Caleb Foster, Duke's into this weird position where Cam Boozer's kind of going to be the point forward, and Caden Boozer's going to be the main point guard, and they are excellent. The Boozer twins are great. My issue is that the sheer responsibility they're going to have when facing a St. John's team that has a bunch of they're grown men, right? Pitino has a bunch of dudes who are in they're all like 22, 23, 24 years old. It's a lot to handle for these younger players. Like we saw it similarly with Duke last year against Houston, right? Where it's just a tough time. They had a tough time when the team was mostly like 20-year-olds, 20-plus-year-olds. And Duke's in a similar position where they're injured as well. Like this is not as good of a team as last year's Duke team. I don't think. I know KenPom has them higher ranked, but I think that's because NIL sort of made everybody kind of worse in a weird way, where like the very best teams aren't quite as good because guys are transferring, chasing money. There's not as much consistency on teams right now. So I think that Duke is going to get upset by St. John's, not because I think Duke's a bad team. I just think that the lack of Caleb Foster and a potentially gimpy Patrick Gamba against a team that has a front court of Zuby Ejiofor and Bryce Hopkins is too much to ask right now. If the Duke were fully healthy, if they had Caleb Foster to bring up the ball and Cam Boozer's able to have less possession, able to play the post, able to shoot threes, like able to do everything he's great at, I think that Duke probably would have won. But because he's going to have an more responsibility handling the ball, I think St. John's ends up taking the game and he wears out by the end of the game. Michigan State against UConn. So UConn's biggest issue all year long was their lack of front court defense. We saw St. John's expose it. Arizona exposed it with Koa Pete. So I think Michigan State has Jackson Kohler and Colin Carr, and those are two excellent front court players, and Jeremy Fears will be able to get the ball to them. So I think that Michigan State makes the Elite Eight. Going to the South, Florida versus Vandy. This is round 4, I believe. I know that Vandy just beat them pretty badly, and that was with Darius Miles, but I don't see that happening again. I think Florida's been really good all year long. They turned into a buzzsaw in the SEC. So I'm going to go with the Gators to beat Vanderbilt in the rematch. Illinois versus Houston. So Illinois' offense has been outstanding. Keaton Wagler's been absolutely outstanding. Houston deciding to trade some of their defensive capability from years past, right, where they would play games in the 60s, like super comfortable doing that. They still are comfortable doing that. Trading some of that defensive insanity for a player like Kai Flemings, who's going to be like a top 5 pick, and more offense and more creativity has been really good for them. They are, again, I've loved watching the Big 12 this year. I think they were the best conference by far. I think Houston is going to go far. I think Houston is going to take advantage of the fact that the regional games are in the city of Houston. So they have a home game against Illinois, and I already think they're better than Illinois. So I'm going to take them in the Elite Eight. Arizona against Arkansas. I love Arkansas. I like Calipari quite a bit. Just in general, I love his mindset with players and everything. Arizona's too much. Arizona's been too much for every team they faced this year. They're 31-2 in the Big 12 is ridiculous. Koa Pete's fully healthy. They're fully healthy. Braden Burries is awesome. Excuse me. I'm getting some of these names mixed up between like Braylon Mullins and Braden Burries. I'm going to double check that. Yeah, Braden Burries. Perfect. Braden Burries has been awesome. Jaden Bradley's awesome. Dela Rosso has been awesome off the bench. Toby Awaka is good. Like the entire team is fantastic. And Arkansas, as good as Darius Acuff is, he's kind of a one-man show, and I don't see Trayvon Brazil being able to like stop Koa Pete and Toby Awaka inside the way you need to without fouling out basically by like the under 12 in the second half. So I'm going Arizona in the Elite Eight. BYU against Purdue. This is where I think BYU's DeBonsa powered run ends. Purdue's really good. Fletcher Lawyer's really good. Braden Smith's really good. I think that those two guards and shooters just carry them into the Elite Eight. Again, nothing against BYU. I think with Richie Saunders, if like Richie Saunders were hypothetically available for this game, I would take BYU, but I just don't think they'll have the firepower to keep up, especially because Oscar Clough has been. Oh, I want to make sure I'm not making up a name there. I know it's Clough. It is Oscar Clough. Perfect. Perfect. With Oscar Clough, they've been very good. So I think that BYU's going to have trouble stopping them inside. And I think Purdue is just going to end up scoring too many points on BYU. BYU not able to keep up, make their way to the Elite Eight. Michigan against Texas Tech. Going Michigan here. Again, this is where, Texas Tech's without JT Toppin. Michigan is without, what's his name, the point guard. They've looked weird, too, offensively. They've looked sort of stagnant. Michigan injured point guard. We should do injured player. That'll be easier. LJ Kaysen, the sophomore guard. He's out for the season, tore his ACL. And it says that. I didn't even notice this. Yaxel Lendeborg suffered an ankle injury. That's not great. So they're banged up. Their offense has been a little stagnant without LJ Kaysen. I think that won't matter as much through the first 2 rounds because Michigan's been so good all year. And their size is ridiculous. That's sort of been their calling card. And I think without JT Top and Texas Tech won't have the inside presence to, punish Mara on the inside and make him potentially like get into foul trouble early. So going with the Wolverines to make it to the Elite Eight. Then we get to Tennessee and Iowa State. Iowa State over Tennessee. They've been awesome all year long. Like I've said, the Big 12 has been outstanding. I don't see a way Tennessee is really able to stop their offense all that much. Both teams don't shoot free throws particularly well, but I think Iowa State is a much better 3-point shooting team, much better shooting team in general than Tennessee. So I think that the level of consistency they have will carry the day and get Iowa State, the Cyclones, to the Elite Eight. Next, we have St. John's and Michigan State. Oh, man. So I love this matchup between hypothetical matchup between Izzo and Pitino. The reason why I'm going to go Izzo is because I think Michigan State's more complete. I've seen them have better offense on the whole. I've seen them have great front court play. Not quite as good as the Ejiofor Hopkins play, but I think that Jackson Kohler and Cohen Carr are more than enough combined with Jeremy Fears, and Michigan State's general shot making that they have is quite good enough to beat St. John's. So I've got Sparty in the Final Four. Florida, Houston. This should be a fantastic game. Absolutely fantastic game. Houston's playing at home. So I think Houston's going to end up winning. Sometimes it's as simple as that. Move out west to Arizona versus Purdue. Purdue's been really good, but the issue Purdue's had all year long, I know they played perfect basketball against Michigan in the Big Ten championship game. They're the preseason number 1. They ended up losing 8 games during the year. They had issues stepping up. They had issues stepping up against Illinois. Wisconsin beat them. Michigan State beat them. Like they just had a consistent issue of that next level up. And it's not because they're a bad team. They're a great team. The issue for Purdue, and they could even win it all. Like I could be totally wrong. This bracket could be wrong. I don't think it will be. But Purdue's issue all year long is that step up in competition. It's like they lose to Alabama. Like they are losing to these teams that, in particular, that frankly they should have been better than. So I think that Arizona, with Koa Pete, with all the players I've mentioned, are going to be too much inside because Purdue's defense is not good. Their offense is insane. When they're rolling, Braden Smith's dribbling around like he's looking like Steve Nash out there, the way he's doing midget dribbles and all that awesome stuff under the hoop, finding Fletcher Loyer, finding Oscar Clough on diving to the rim. It's awesome to watch. The issue is that they've allowed like 90 plus points to teams that aren't as good as Arizona. And Arizona can score on anybody. They ripped through the Big 12 this year. So I think that Arizona is going to make it to the Final Four for the first time since like 2000, I believe, when Lute Olson was the coach. We get to Michigan versus Iowa State. So now, Michigan being banged up, this is where it hurts them. I think I know there's a Big 12 flavor to this, obviously. But I think truly this is where being banged up against such a good shooting team that doesn't need to attack inside, that will just shoot over the top of you between Tamin Lipsey and Milan Momlovic. And there's another player. I've used him as a picture before, as a blog header. Just pulling his name up. Jefferson. Something Jefferson. Forgive me. Joshua Jefferson, yeah. So Joshua Jefferson as a forward is really good, obviously, like I've been saying. Milan Momcilovic, 17 points a game, shooting 50% from 3. And then you have Joshua Jefferson, who's shooting 35% from 3. Tamin Lipsey shooting 31% from 3. Which is, for a college player, you love that. But then you have Jamarian Bateman coming off the bench, shooting 40% from 3. You just have a ton of shooting. absolute ton of shooting. Nate Hezzy has shooting. He's 30% from the 3-point line. He's got a ton of players shooting from three all the time. And I think that Michigan being sort of stagnant on offense and having to get in these dogfights against Wisconsin, getting these dogfights, losing pretty badly to Purdue, um, who were Purdue, like Iowa State's offense is not as good as Purdue's offense. I think Iowa State's offense is more than enough to give Michigan trouble with their shooting. So I'm thinking that we see a pretty great Iowa State team making the Final Four. And with all this Big 12 flavor, Michigan State versus Houston, I don't think this is the year the Big Ten breaks the curse. I think Houston is a better overall team than Michigan State. They remind me of each other quite a bit, actually, with their general construction of like these defensive, front court heavy, experienced teams. But on the whole, I think Houston's been outstanding this year. They're tough to quit. They're tough to quit knowing how good they've been. So I'm going to go with the Cougars to make it to the final and face off against Arizona. I know Arizona and Iowa State just played an instant classic, absolute awesome game in the Big 12 semifinal. But I think, like I've been saying, Iowa State's not a great free throw shooting team, and their defense, while good to great, it's had its issues stopping Arizona all year. So they played 3 times. This will be the 4th time they've played, and I think Arizona gets them again. And in the final, this is a tough one. Truly it is. Because, the Big 12 has been really solid, like I've been saying, all year long. Right. With the Big 12 being as good as it's been all year, you look at Arizona. They've won every which way. They can win ugly. They can win high scoring. It's you pick. It's basically you pick how you lose. Where you have them beating Houston 79-74. They beat Houston 73-66. So it'd be round 3, excuse me, not round 4. So you have this pretty awesome team here where their only 2 losses were back-to-back. They lost at Kansas, they lost at Kansas. They lose at Texas Tech in overtime. They were hosting Texas Tech and lost to them in overtime. Big whoop there. Like, Big 12 has good teams. Them being able to beat Houston twice in similar ways where they're scoring all these points and Houston not really having answers for the inside play, or someone like Del Orso who can just go off and have a great game. Anthony Del Orso has been great. Koa Pete, like I've mentioned, has been absolutely outstanding. Braden Burries has been outstanding. Jaden Bradley's had himself a great season as the primary ball handler. Montejas Krivas, the center from Lithuania, has had a great year. And then Karchenkov, I'm not sure where Karchenkov's from. I'm going to guess. Oh, I'm wrong. He's from Munich, Germany. I was going to guess Ukraine based off the last name, but, those stereotypes and all that, whatever. So they have this great team, and then they have Braden Burries, Koa Pete, Jaden Bradley, Krivas, and Karchenkov starting. Then Toby Awaka and Anthony Del Orso coming off the bench. It's a handful. It really is, and I think that for Houston, again, they've been great as well. Nothing but, I think like I said, I think they're a great team. I think I have them in the final. I just have them losing the final. Kingston Flemings has been awesome. CNAC's been awesome. Emmanuel Sharp and Milos Uzan are great players. Joseph Tugler is a great player. I would not be shocked if Houston were to win. However, I've watched too many Arizona games. I've seen what they've done all year long in the toughest conference in the country. So I'm going to have to pick Arizona as my national champion. I think that on the whole, they've done it all year long. Their whole season starts, right? Funnily enough. They open first game of the year against Florida. They beat Florida. They beat UCLA. They travel to Storrs, Connecticut and beat UConn. They beat Auburn and Alabama in December. Have a bit of a break. You know, they don't lose until February 9th at Kansas. That's their first loss of the year. They ripped through the Big 12. They beat up teams they're supposed to beat up by 20, by 30 points. They win a tight one at BYU facing that monster AJ Devonsa. Then they have those two losses, and then they go right back to winning, where they beat BYU, they beat Houston, then they beat Kansas, then they beat Iowa State, and they beat Iowa State and Houston on their way to winning the Big 12 title. And I think that, like they've done all year, they'll beat Houston and win the title. And I think that the game score will be 149. Going with a total of 149. You know what? I will enter. And I will submit my bracket. There we go. So, thank you everybody for watching the stream. Gonna check back in once the games start rolling in. Do a bit of a Monday recap stream, and hopefully we end up with a good champion here. Have a fun bracket to watch and everything. So thank you everybody for tuning in and hanging out with me. So it's been Make Money with Mace, and I'll be signing off. Thank you everybody.